His mistress got pregnant and asked me to raise the baby, but his uncle said no, we have one too. Chapter 1, The Scandal Breaks. It began as a whisper, a murmur in the gilded halls of the elite. By noon, it had spiraled into a storm of gossip, sweeping through the upper echelons of society. The news of Daniel's mistress, Sophie, being pregnant was more than just a scandal, it was a humiliation for me, his fiancée. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages filled with pity and veiled mockery. I ignored them all, clinging to the hope that this was nothing more than a vile rumor. But deep down, I knew better. I first heard it directly from a colleague at a charity gala. "Have you heard, Emma? Sophie's expecting Daniel's child." The word struck like a dagger, the pain sharp and immediate. I excused myself, feigning composure, and made my way to the powder room. Looking at my reflection, I saw a woman on the verge of breaking. The whispers followed me wherever I went that night, their voices like vultures circling a wounded prey. Back home, my mother's face betrayed her concern even as she tried to console me. "Emma, marriages and families like the Reeds aren't about love. You have to rise above these things." Her words did little to comfort me. The weight of expectation bore down on me, demanding I maintain my poise despite the betrayal. But I wasn't sure how long I could keep up the charade. Alone in my room, I lay awake, replaying the day's events in my mind. The world now saw me as the woman who couldn't even keep her fiancé's loyalty. I wondered if there was a way out of this mess or if I was destined to endure this torment for the sake of my engagement. The ring on my finger, once a symbol of hope, now felt like a shackle. By morning, the tabloids had plastered the scandal across their pages. Pictures of Daniel and Sophie, smiling and unashamed, were splashed alongside my stoic face. My humiliation was now public knowledge, and the Reed family remained silent, as they always did. Their indifference spoke volumes, and I realized I was on my own in facing this storm. Chapter 2, The Birthday Party Betrayal. The day of my 27th birthday was supposed to be a joyous occasion, a celebration of love and stability amidst the chaos that had engulfed my life. Yet, as I stood in the grand ballroom adorned with glittering chandeliers and white roses, I felt uneasy. The eyes of the guests were on me, not with admiration, but with pity and expectation. I clung to the hope that Daniel would show up and make things right, but when the doors opened, my world shattered further. Daniel strolled in with Sophie on his arm, her hand resting possessively on his chest. Gasps echoed through the room as the murmurs started again. He was as nonchalant as ever, offering me a smile that sent chills down my spine. "Happy birthday, Emma," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Sophie and I have news to share. She's carrying my child." His words cut through the air like a knife, leaving the room deathly silent. I clutched my champagne glass tightly, trying to steady myself as his words sank in. My mind raced, searching for an appropriate response that wouldn't give away the storm brewing inside me. But before I could speak, Daniel added, "Don't worry. You'll always be Mrs. Reed. And the child, well, you'll raise him, won't you?" His casual tone, as if discussing an insignificant detail, pushed me to the brink of breaking. Just as I opened my mouth, a strong, steady hand settled on my waist. "She won't be raising your child, Daniel," a deep voice declared. Heads turned as Liam Reed, Daniel's powerful uncle, stepped forward, his presence commanding the room. His gaze was sharp, his words deliberate. "Because she'll be raising your cousin." A soft chuckle escaped his lips, but his eyes were deadly serious. The silence in the room turned into a roar of whispers. I felt the heat of embarrassment flush my cheeks, but Liam's firm grip anchored me. For the first time that night, I felt a glimmer of safety amidst the chaos. Daniel's smug smile faltered, and Sophie's face twisted in fury. Liam leaned closer, his voice low and soothing. "Let me handle this, Emma. You don't have to face them alone anymore." Chapter 3, An Unexpected Ally. The moment Liam spoke, the balance of power in the room shifted. Daniel stood frozen, his arrogance replaced by confusion and anger. Sophie clung to him, her once confident demeanor now fragile. Liam, however, remained calm, his presence overshadowing everyone in the ballroom. He guided me to a quieter corner, shielding me from the prying eyes of the guests. "Why did you say that?" I asked, my voice trembling. Liam's gaze softened as he replied, "Because it's the truth. You've suffered enough, Emma. It's time someone stood up for you." His words surprised me, not just because of their sincerity, but because they came from someone I barely knew. Until that moment, Liam had been a distant figure, a powerful name within the Reed family but rarely seen. Liam explained further, his tone measured but firm. "Daniel's actions disgrace our family. If he refuses to protect you, then I will. You deserve better than to be humiliated like this." My mind reeled from his declaration. Was this an act of genuine kindness, or did Liam have ulterior motives? Either way, his intervention had given me a reprieve, and for that, I was grateful. The rest of the party passed in a blur. Liam stayed by my side, his presence a deterrent to anyone daring enough to approach me. I couldn't help but notice the whispers and stolen glances from the guests. They were no longer pitying me, they were speculating about Liam's intentions. For once, I didn't care. I was too tired to confront anything else. As the night ended, Liam offered to escort me home. I hesitated but eventually agreed. In the car, he turned to me and said, "You may not trust me yet, Emma, but I promise you this, I'll make sure you're treated with the respect you deserve." His words stayed with me long after I closed the door behind me, marking the beginning of an unexpected alliance. Chapter 4, Whispers of Rebellion. The following morning, the events of the party replayed in my mind like a surreal dream. Liam's intervention had sent ripples through the social circle, and the whispers had shifted focus. No longer was I just the humiliated fiancé, now, I was the woman protected by the powerful Liam Reed. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that his actions came with strings attached. The news quickly reached Daniel, who stormed into my house that afternoon. His face was flushed with anger, his voice sharp and accusatory. "What game are you playing with my uncle, Emma?" he demanded. His words stunned me, not because of their venom, but because they revealed his fear. For once, Daniel seemed to feel the weight of losing control. "I'm not playing any game," I replied calmly, masking my turmoil. "You humiliated me, Daniel. Did you expect me to stand silently forever?" My words seemed to enrage him further, but before he could respond, Liam appeared, his presence as commanding as ever. "That's enough, Daniel," he said. "Emma deserves better than this." His words were a shield, protecting me from Daniel's wrath. As Daniel left, defeated and fuming, I turned to Liam. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. His answer was simple but cryptic. "Because someone needs to." I didn't know whether to feel grateful or suspicious. Liam's actions had shaken the dynamics of the Reed family, and I was now caught in the center of it all. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something had shifted within me. For too long, I had allowed myself to be a pawn in Daniel's games. But with Liam's unexpected support, I felt the stirrings of rebellion. I resolved to take control of my life, no matter how daunting the road ahead seemed. Chapter 5, A Family Divided. The fallout from Liam's declaration at the party spread quickly through the Reed family. Daniel's parents were furious, accusing Liam of meddling in matters that didn't concern him. "You've overstepped, Liam," his father declared during a tense family meeting. "This isn't your fight." But Liam remained unyielding. "It became my fight when Daniel humiliated Emma publicly," he replied, his tone calm but firm. Meanwhile, Sophie sought to solidify her position. She arrived at the Reed estate, her demeanor confident but her eyes betraying nervousness. "I'm carrying the next heir," she announced, her voice trembling slightly. "You can't ignore me." Her words were met with cold silence, the family unwilling to validate her claim. Liam's voice broke the tension. "You may be carrying a child, but that doesn't make you family," he said bluntly, his words cutting through Sophie's bravado. I watched the scene unfold from a distance, unsure of where I fit into the family's power struggles. Liam's protection had elevated my status, but it also made me a target for those who viewed me as a threat. Daniel's mother, in particular, regarded me with thinly veiled hostility. "You've caused enough trouble, Emma," she said. It's time you stepped aside. Her words stung, but I refused to back down. Liam's support became my anchor during these turbulent times. He seemed to anticipate my every need, offering advice and protection without asking for anything in return. Yet, his intentions remained a mystery. Was he acting out of genuine care, or did he have his own reasons for opposing Daniel and Sophie? As days turned into weeks, I began to see the cracks in the Reed family's facade. They were a family bound by power, but beneath the surface, their alliances were fragile and their loyalties divided. And now, I found myself in the middle of their silent war, unsure of who to trust. Chapter 6, A New Revelation. As Liam and I grew closer, his enigmatic nature began to unravel. He wasn't just a powerful figure in the Reed family, he was a man burdened by responsibilities and secrets. One evening, as we shared a quiet dinner, he opened up about his past. "I've always been the one cleaning up after Daniel's messes," he admitted. "But this time, I couldn't stand by and watch him destroy someone else's life." His words struck a chord with me. For the first time, I saw Liam not as a savior, but as a man trying to do what he believed was right. "Why do you care so much about me?" I asked cautiously. He looked at me, his gaze steady. "Because you deserve better, Emma. And because you remind me of someone I couldn't save." His honesty took me by surprise, leaving me with more questions than answers. Meanwhile, Daniel's attempts to regain control became increasingly desperate. He confronted me at work, his usual arrogance replaced by a sense of vulnerability. "I made a mistake, Emma," he said, his voice low. "I should never have hurt you." His words were meant to sway me, but they only deepened my resolve. "It's too late, Daniel," I replied. "You don't get to decide my worth anymore." Sophie, on the other hand, grew bolder. She confronted me at a charity event, her words dripping with venom. "You'll never be enough for the Reeds," she sneered. "You're just a placeholder until someone better comes along." Her attack was calculated, but it didn't have the effect she intended. I stood tall, refusing to let her see my pain. The turning point came when Liam publicly defended me at a board meeting. His actions solidified his position as my ally, but they also escalated tensions within the Reed family. The power struggle was no longer just about Daniel and Sophie, it was about the future of the family itself. And I was at the center of it all. Chapter 7, Sophie's Ultimatum. The tension between Sophie and me reached its breaking point during a formal family dinner. Dressed to perfection, Sophie walked in as though she already belonged, her gaze fixed on me with disdain. As the evening progressed, she made her move, leaning into Daniel and speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "If Emma can't handle this situation, perhaps she should step aside," she said with a smirk. Her words were a calculated strike, but before I could respond, Liam interjected. "Emma is more than capable of handling herself," he said firmly. His sharp tone silenced the room, and for the first time, Sophie seemed unsure of her footing. She glared at him, her confidence wavering. "This isn't your fight, Liam," she snapped. "Stay out of it." But Liam didn't back down. "It became my fight the moment you tried to humiliate Emma in front of us all," he said coldly. His words sent a clear message: Sophie might have Daniel on her side, but she wouldn't intimidate me as long as Liam was around. The room fell into an uneasy silence, the unspoken alliances within the family becoming clearer. Later that evening, Sophie confronted me in private. "Do you really think Liam's support will protect you forever?" she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "You're just a pawn to him, Emma. Don't mistake his pity for love." Her words stung, but I refused to let her see my pain. "Perhaps," I replied, my voice calm. "But even a pawn can take down a queen." As Sophie stormed off, I realized how much I had changed. The quiet, compliant woman I once was had been replaced by someone who was willing to fight for her dignity. Sophie's ultimatums no longer held power over me, and for the first time, I felt like I was regaining control of my life. Chapter 8, Daniel's Desperation. Daniel's desperation to regain control of the situation became evident when he showed up uninvited at my apartment. His once arrogant demeanor was replaced by a frantic energy, and his words came tumbling out in a rush. Emma, you can't let Liam come between us, he pleaded. We belong together. I stared at him, stunned by his audacity. Belong together? I repeated, my voice rising. You humiliated me in front of everyone, flaunted your mistress, and expected me to raise her child. How can you even say that? My anger was palpable, but Daniel seemed unfazed, as though he truly believed his words. I made mistakes, he admitted, his tone softening. But I still love you, Emma. We can fix this. His desperation was almost pitiable, but I couldn't ignore the damage he had done. It's too late, Daniel, I said firmly. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. As Daniel's pleas grew more frantic, Liam arrived. His presence was a stark contrast to Daniel's chaos, calm, steady, and unwavering. That's enough, Liam said, his voice low but commanding. Emma doesn't owe you anything. Daniel glared at him, but he didn't dare challenge Liam. After Daniel left, Liam turned to me. You handled that well, he said, his voice filled with quiet admiration. I didn't need rescuing, I replied, trying to mask the gratitude I felt. But as Liam smiled, I realized that his support wasn't just about obligation, it was about something deeper. Chapter 9, Sophie's Downfall. Sophie's carefully crafted image began to crumble under the weight of her own schemes. Rumors of her manipulations started to surface, and her once loyal allies began to distance themselves. It wasn't long before the cracks in her facade became too big to ignore. At a high-profile charity auction, Sophie tried to regain control. She made a grand entrance, draped in designer couture, her every move calculated to draw attention. But her plan backfired when an anonymous bidder exposed a scandalous secret about her finances. Whispers filled the room, and Sophie's confidence wavered for the first time. Liam was quick to act, using the moment to shift the narrative. Perhaps this isn't the place for such theatrics, he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. His calm authority silenced the room, and all eyes turned to Sophie, who looked like a deer caught in headlights. After the event, Sophie confronted me, her mask of confidence completely shattered. You think you've won, don't you? She spat, her voice trembling with anger. This isn't over. But her threats felt hollow, and for the first time, I saw her for what she truly was, a woman clinging desperately to a crumbling facade. As Sophie's influence waned, I found myself stepping into a new role, not just as Liam's ally, but as a woman capable of standing on her own. The power dynamics had shifted, and for the first time, I felt like I was truly in control of my destiny. Chapter 10, The Truth About Liam. As my bond with Liam deepened, I began to uncover the layers of his enigmatic personality. He was a man of contradictions, calm yet fiercely protective, aloof yet deeply empathetic. One evening, as we shared a quiet moment on his estate, he revealed a truth that left me reeling. I wasn't always this way, Liam admitted, his voice tinged with regret. I've made mistakes, Emma. But seeing how Daniel treated you reminded me of someone I failed to protect. His confession was raw and unguarded, and it gave me a glimpse of the pain he carried. I listened in silence, my heart aching for the man who had become my unexpected savior. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Liam looked at me, his gaze steady. Because you deserve honesty, Emma. And because I care about you more than I should. His words caught me off guard, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Liam had been my anchor during the storm, but his feelings for me added a new layer of complexity to our relationship. I couldn't deny the growing connection between us, but I also couldn't ignore the lingering shadows of my past. As Liam's confession lingered in the air, I realized that my journey was far from over. The battles I had fought were only the beginning, and the choices I made now would shape the rest of my life. But for the first time, I felt ready to face whatever lay ahead, with or without Liam by my side. Chapter 11, The Final Choice. As the days passed, the tension between Liam and me grew. Despite the undeniable chemistry between us, I couldn't help but wonder if our connection was just the result of our shared battles. Our conversations became deeper, more personal, but a nagging doubt lingered in the back of my mind. Was I truly ready to let go of my past? Sophie's relentless attempts to undermine me continued, but her influence was fading. She knew it, and I knew it. Her final attempt to sabotage my reputation at a high-profile gala only reinforced how far she had fallen from grace. At the event, she tried to make a scene, but when the truth of her schemes was exposed, it became the last nail in her coffin. With Sophie's defeat, the storm finally began to settle. Daniel, too, had finally accepted the end of our relationship. Though his apology was sincere, it was too little, too late. He had crossed a line that couldn't be erased with mere words. His departure from my life, though bittersweet, marked the beginning of my healing. One evening, Liam and I found ourselves standing at a crossroads. He took my hand, his touch gentle yet firm. "Emma, I want to be with you," he said, his voice unwavering. "But I won't rush you. You've been through enough." His patience and understanding were a balm to my wounded heart. I looked at him, a wave of emotion crashing over me. I had faced betrayal, loss, and humiliation. But with Liam by my side, I felt like I could finally rebuild my life. "I want to be with you, too," I whispered. And just like that, the future seemed clear. We had both fought hard for what we wanted, and now, it was time to move forward, together. Chapter 12, The Beginning of Forever. It was a quiet evening when Liam and I decided to leave everything behind. After the chaos, the lies, and the battles, we found solace in each other's company. The mansion that once felt cold and uninviting now felt like a home, filled with laughter, comfort, and love. We made the decision to start fresh, away from the shadows of our past. Together, we began to build a future based on mutual trust and respect. Liam, who had once been consumed by his own struggles, now focused on creating a life that included me, not just as his partner, but as an equal. Sophie's and Daniel's faces faded from my mind, replaced by the promise of a new beginning. It wasn't that I had forgotten them, it was that I had finally realized that I didn't need to carry their baggage with me anymore. My happiness didn't depend on them, it depended on me. The first few months were filled with small, simple moments that made all the difference. Late-night conversations, shared meals, and quiet walks under the stars. I was no longer the woman who had lived in the shadows of others. I was Emma, strong, independent, and ready for whatever life had to offer. As Liam and I stood side by side, looking out over the horizon, I knew that we had both earned our happy ending. We had fought, fallen, and rebuilt ourselves. Together, we had created something stronger than the pain of the past. And now, nothing could stand in our way. Epilogue, a new legacy. A year later, our life was filled with joy, and the family we had become was unrecognizable from the one we had once known. Sophie, Daniel, and all the others who had once played pivotal roles in our lives were distant memories. Our love had been tested, and we had emerged stronger. Liam and I worked together on projects that not only advanced our careers but also brought us closer. We traveled, explored new opportunities, and built a family of our own. I had learned to trust again, to love again, and to value the person I had become. On a bright, sunny day, surrounded by our closest friends and family, Liam and I celebrated a quiet, intimate wedding. There were no extravagant displays, no public spectacles, just a promise made between two people who had learned to love through hardship and triumph. As I stood by his side, my heart swelling with pride, I realized that this was the life I had always dreamed of, one filled with love, respect, and the freedom to be myself. The shadows of the past had finally faded, leaving only the bright light of our future. Together, Liam and I had rewritten our story, one filled with resilience, hope, and the undeniable truth that love, in its purest form, conquers all. And so, our journey began, forever.